All right, today we are diving into a pretty intense fairy tale. This is a story that we're going to bring to life. It's all about a princess who, well, was never supposed to exist, a father's unbelievably cruel command, and the amazing power of taking control of your own narrative.
It all starts with these 5 words. A king says this, and just like that, he thinks he sealed his daughter's fate before she's even taken her first breath. It's a command that would just hang over his kingdom for years, all because of this one chilling prejudice.
But weeks later, a daughter was born. Her very existence, her first cry, was an act of defiance against a father who literally wanted her dead from the start.
So our story really kicks off with a massive secret. The queen is faced with this totally impossible choice, and she decides to defy her husband's horrific order to save her child's life.
In this really desperate act of love, the queen gives the midwife gold, jewels, anything to protect her baby. She entrusts her with the infant's life. So as far as the palace is concerned, the child is dead. But in reality, the princess is alive, tucked away, and raised in secret as the midwife's own granddaughter.
But you know how these things go. A secret that huge, it rarely stays buried forever. And years later, fate steps in a way that is, well, it's both shocking and just plain terrible.
So years fly by, and the princess grows up into this incredibly beautiful young woman. Then one day, the king's royal procession is making its way through the city. And in this moment of pure random chance, his eyes land on a stranger, and he is just completely captivated. The king is absolutely consumed by this question. He has to know who she is. So he sends his minister, his wazir, to the midwife's house with a proposal that is going to change everything. Get this. The king wants to marry the beautiful girl he saw. The midwife, of course, refuses, so she's dragged to the palace and tortured until she finally screams the truth. She is your daughter. I never killed her. And just like that, in an instant, the king's desire just curdles into pure, unadulterated rage. So his secret shame is now out in the open. You'd think he'd repent, right? Nope. Instead, he calls for his son, the prince, and gives him this monstrous new order. Take this sister you never even knew you had, take her into the forest, and kill her. But the prince, he just found out he even has a sister, and he can't do it. There's no way. In this incredible act of mercy, he leads her deep into the woods and just tells her to run. To trick their father, he hunts a deer, cuts out its eyes, and brings them back to the palace as this gruesome, bloody proof that the deed is done.
So the princess survives, again. For years, she manages to build a new life for herself in a faraway land, but a journey to finally confront her past turns into a whole new kind of nightmare, as she faces betrayal from the very people who were supposed to protect her.
So yeah, she survived the forest. She was found by another king, a kind one, who fell in love with her. They got married, they even had a son. But when she finally tells him her whole story, he insists they have to go back to her father's kingdom to get justice. He sends her on ahead with his most trusted advisors, his wazir, his judge, and his lawyer. But this journey just turns into a horror show. One by one, these men betray her trust. The wazir comes into her tent and demands she leave her husband for him. She flees in terror, runs to the judge, the qazi, begging for help, and he just turns his back on her. Finally, she runs to the lawyer, the wakil, who makes the exact same despicable proposition. She's trapped. There is no one to turn to. Her child is asleep in the tent she just ran from. She feels like there's only one way out. She runs to the bank of a nearby river and, in this moment of just absolute despair, she throws herself into the water. But her story is not over. Not even close. After surviving yet again, the princess comes up with this brilliant plan to take back her own narrative and finally get the justice she deserves. She gets pulled from the river by a kind hermit. After she recovers, she starts wandering, only to realize the ultimate bitter irony. She's back in her birth kingdom, the land ruled by the father who has now sentenced her to death not once but twice. But she knows something about her father. He loves a good story. So she covers her face with a veil and goes to the palace disguised as a storyteller. Her weapon this time won't be a sword, it's going to be her own life, told as a fairy tale. And so, right there in the middle of the royal court,
With her father, her brother, and her husband all sitting there, a single story begins to unravel a whole lifetime of injustice.
She begins her tale, and the first chapter is just a gut punch aimed directly at the king. She talks about a cruel ruler who, simply because he hated the idea of having daughters, ordered his own newborn child to be killed.
And the story hits its target. The old king doesn't even need to hear more. The weight of his own guilt is just too much to bear. And right there, in front of the entire court, he bows his head in shame.
The veiled storyteller keeps going. She tells of how that same king later ordered his own son to kill his sister, and how that prince, full of compassion, defied that order and chose mercy instead.
And at this, her brother, the prince, he just completely breaks down. He starts weeping because he realizes this storyteller knows his deepest, most guarded secret. He offers her jewels, begging her, please continue the story. Then, when her story gets to the part about the betrayal on the road, her husband, the visiting king, he leaps to his feet. He finally understands the deceit of his advisors and orders them to be seized. The wazir, the wakil, and the qazi are all dragged away, destined to be in prison for life.
And in that moment, the veil comes off. The family is reunited. You have a father begging for forgiveness, a brother weeping with relief, and a husband who finally understands the true depth of his wife's strength. She reclaimed her own life, not with violence, but with the undeniable power of telling the truth, out loud. Which really just leaves us all with one big question. When is this story more powerful than a sword?